politics and dynamics were completely turned on their head. But we are here. Hopefully, everyone is
Yes.
safe, and we're on the rebound. So, um,
Yes.
let me at least give you the floor. What's your message? What are the points you want to convey out?
What critically important is that I'm running to be the next mayor of New York City because I know this is a city where we will all be able to live with dignity. And that means all of us. What is so wonderful about New York is that everyone is here and that we have to remain a city where we can live and live decent lives, safe lives, lives of meaning, no matter who we are, no matter what we look like, no matter how we worship, whether we have big bank accounts or no bank accounts at all. That's the richness that is New York City. And it has been far too endangered from everything from the cost of living to racial injustice, the rise of hate, as we've seen, and we know far too high a rise in anti-Semitism, for example. And we've had a spiritual malaise. We're devastated by COVID, by the trauma that is COVID, by all that it has taken from us. And at the same time, it has given us an opportunity to reimagine our city so it is more affordable, so we become less divided, so that we invest in our communities, so that all our children get what they need, so that we're safe in our own streets and we're safe both from crime and from police violence. And these are things that are possible. And what it requires is leadership that calls us together, that listens, that learns, and recognizes it's not a one size fits all because we are such a large city. We have so much diversity in it, and we have to be in partnership to make sure that we're producing dignity for every single one of our neighborhoods, for all our people, because that's how we recover what we love about the city, but also make it work better for all of us. And that's why I'm running.
Is there a mechanism to make sure that it's allocated, over all the communities? Because I know now one thing we hear all the time is in the Jewish community, nobody could recall a affordable housing project. Like, how do you fix that to make, everyone uses the term fair share? So how do you ensure that each community is allocated their fair share of affordable housing?
Well, so affordable housing has multiple components. So vacant land is one thing, because the vacant land you utilize where it is, right? Like you go where you have it and you leverage it. And of course, you always partner. So you find those opportunities and meet those needs. I mean, a big part of, I think, what you're asking is about how the city is listening and learning about where the needs and opportunities are. Because in addition to vacant land, there are things like take our hotels that are shuttered right now, right? That's an opportunity for permanently affordable housing too, because we can leverage that and buy that and turn that into permanently affordable housing. There's also the way we're using zoning laws and rezonings in order to incentivize and create more permanently affordable housing, asking more from developers as well to create what we need in communities. But that does require community participation and partnership in order to make sure we're meeting those needs. And that's everything from size to also affordability levels. Because as you know, one of the major critiques around the DeBlasio administration was not actually whether it was meeting its goals around creating and preserving affordable housing, is how affordable was it, right? Because we have a lot of affordability need that was at much lower income levels than what we were producing. And there are ways that we have to create an integrated housing strategy that recognizes it's our vacant land, it's what the city can buy, it's what the city can refurbish, it's how we use our zoning, it's how we partner with the private sector in terms of the development that does, all of which are tools available to us, and all of which requires partnership with communities around their needs, so that we're actually doing the planning and growing and developing in a way that does not displace our people, but rather serves them. So a lot of that we have to do together.
So one of the issues that you touched upon in your previous answer was with regard to education and making sure we have the proper schooling. Obviously, it's not a surprise to you, having served in the de Blasio administration, that by and large, Orthodox send to private, secular, and yeshivas. There's much ado, at least in the community, with regard to a push for a greater degree of oversight, and I would label it intrusion into the yeshiva education that's being provided. What would your approach be to that crisis? That, or I should say, it's not a crisis, but some people would like to label as a crisis within the yeshivas.
Well, the first is start by listening and learning. Look, we have to understand that every child is ours, right? Every child in this city is a child of this city. And we need the success of all of our children, and we need all of our children to get what they need, and we have to partner in that. One of the things I've heard directly from the community about already was a problem I was well aware of, but certainly the depth of it for the Jewish community because of that is also getting the resources families are legally entitled to be in private institutions when the needs of their kids, the learning disabilities, are not being addressed in the public schools. And it is critically important that the Department of Education get significantly better about dealing with those in a way that meets its legal obligations. And meeting legal obligations as something, as a lawyer, I care deeply about. And as a civil rights lawyer, I care deeply about anybody in our city who has special needs or disabilities of any kind getting what they're legally entitled to. And that includes our students who are in yeshivas. That's a legal right and an entitlement. In terms of what you're talking about, look, it's there's state levels of accountability that the city has. So I have to understand better what those are and how we're being asked to meet them. And certainly every single educational institution has to meet whatever our state requirements are. But the job of the city is to be responsive to what is required, not to penalize or attack or vilify anyone. My partner is Jewish. He is the son of Holocaust, mother and grandparents were Holocaust survivors. It's one of the reasons I say I have a deep understanding for the fact that we have to recognize, we all have different experiences and make different choices in this city. And what we have to do is listen and learn from one another and recognize that that difference is part of what makes us rich. It's part of what makes us also have the unique opportunity to understand our challenges and needs and make sure we're in partnership around them.
Let me just say one thing on the topic, because I'm also interested in it, and I'm sure for the Jewish community at this point, this is really, I don't know if I'd say the topic, but it probably is, because people's children's are their lives, and what they learn is very meaningful. And everything they do for the kids. So I just want to clarify what Sam was saying. I think obviously everybody understands that as mayor, and even though Department of Education is a mayoral agency, you're bound by whatever the state requirements are. And I think everyone could appreciate that. But I think where the mayor has discretion is the interplay between compulsory education law and religious and parental rights. In other words, the Supreme Court's been unambiguous and very clear in that parental rights and religious accommodations are a factor in determining what compulsory education is. So I think that's something that people want to know in terms of whether or not you would use your discretion to find that balance, because I think you really hit the nail on the head. Up until now, the discussion has really been, not discussion, but their perspective's been, look, there's a compulsory education law, and therefore we're going to require that that law is fulfilled, which is an understandable position. But I think on the other side is that the Supreme Court has recognized that that's not a law that's written in stone and is not supposed to factor in parental choice and religious preference. So there seems to be some give and take over there in terms of the use of discretion from the DOE of where that line is. And I think the biggest question that comes out in this whole discussion is, do you put form over substance? In other words, do you enforce an hour requirement, or are you more results oriented and say, let's see, we have standardized tests, we have ELAs, we have math tests. Let's look at those scores and see where the yeshivas are and where the public schools are. So I think that's the real question here. Meaning fundamentally, you have two ways to go. the state seems to have taken the position up until this point that it's really form over substance. So, and I think the community's position is A, that there's constitutional rights in terms of religion and parental rights, and B, put substance over form. And I think Mr. Yang addressed this, look at the results. So I guess my real question is, how do you look at that argument, the substance over form, and have things result-based? I guess that's my question.
Well, results is what I care about. I will say I'm someone who's much more skeptical about high stakes testing is the best way to know the results, because we also know sometimes they discriminate. So I think there's a question of form of assessment, but that's probably a separate discussion than what you're raising. I think this is the point, is it shouldn't be, look, I am a believer in it is the outcomes of the educational standards that we want to ensure, and that there are many ways to get there. I'm not enough expert on exactly what is happening in DOE and with these discussions to comment more directly and specifically. It's something I got to learn, but I think what I'm hearing is, I am absolutely open to this discussion. When we were doing universal pre-K, when I was counsel to Mayor DeBlasio, one of the things that was our commitment was, we want to make sure we give every child in this city, every family in the city, the opportunity to have the benefit of universal pre-K. And that meant, and we had some folks that were saying, look, we don't think religious institutions should be allowed to be community-based partners in delivering UPK. And we disagreed and said, no, we don't agree. And in fact, we need to make sure that every single community has every single opportunity that we can make available for that kind of seat. It's critically important to the development of our kids. And now we had to stay within the rules of the road that the Constitution dictates around public dollars and religious education. Obviously, there's a constitutional issue there, but within that, we actually met with and worked with every different religious denomination that was interested, and faith that was interested in doing this, to maximize as much as possible, accommodate within the bounds of the Constitution and the law, what we could do to facilitate that happening and to ensure that those seats were available, whether it was Catholic, whether it was Muslim, whether it was Jewish, educational opportunities. So
let me ask you a question, because obviously it's not fair to put you on the spot what you would do. But throughout this campaign, since this is an issue, would you commit to putting something out in terms of structurally how you would approach it? In other words, it's an issue that, if you get to Gracie Mansion, will be relevant to a tremendous segment of your constituency. Mm-hmm. So is this something that you would, commit to get involved with and sort of find out where that line is of religious rights and parental rights, and how something could be worked out?
Oh, I'm absolutely committed to these conversations. This is obviously going to be an ongoing one that we have to figure out together as a city. There's no question that my way of leading is listening and learning and partnering, because I view the outcome as, something that we have to co-create. And that means obviously always within the rules of the road that we are given either by the state or the federal government or the Constitution. But other than that, it's about our creativity, and it's about our ability to ensure that our kids are getting what they need. So that's something that I'm absolutely open to.